All right. I am going to make a motion, call to order for the special meeting for the Board of Ed. Andrea, would you be willing to take notes for this small stuff for me?
Absolutely.
Thank you, my love.
Okay.
So I've just called the meeting to order at 5:18. And I am going to make a motion that we are going to go into executive session for purposes of discussion of the new superintendent, or the contract for the new superintendent. Can I have a second? Okay.
Who's second?
I
All
said
right.
second.
I got Liz or Jane,
I think
whichever
Liz
one
may
you
be
put down first.
What was?
Ask Kim who she wants to invite.
And then I'm going to, thank you, Mark. I'm going to invite, in that motion, I'm going to ask that Lori and Ken Knight join us for purposes of this discussion. So actually, that should be the motion, Andrea, with the invite to Lori and Ken. And then Liz, I'm going to have you continue to second that.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of going into the executive session for the Board of Ed in purposes of talking about the new superintendent's contract with the invite for Lori and Ken, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, that motion is carried. Caitlin, I just need to make sure that either probably Jay needs to be able to have screen share when you put us into the group. All right, make your magic, Kate. Okay, we got, so Jay.
I make a motion that we authorize Kim Shepherdson Watson, the chair, to present our contract offer as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Seconded by Liz. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? The motion is carried. Can I have a motion for adjournment for the special meeting for the board?
So moved.
So move.
All right.
All right, I'll
All those in
second.
favor, please say
I'll
aye.
get you all.
Fine.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion is carried. We have now
Actually,
ended at
Who
6.
made that motion? Who made that? motion?
I think Lee and then Dean.
I'll take a second.
And we
Okay.
now have our parliamentarian online. Joan is here, so she can now direct us from here on.
Right.
Well, let's see if she's taught me well. So it is my honor and privilege to start the Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting November 16th, and at 6:03 in the, I was gonna say in the morning, and that
It's been a
feels
long
not
day.
okay. It has been a long day. Kate, I just want to let you know that Rosemary had told me that she was going to be entering our meeting late. So just anticipate that if she is not here, she is going to be here momentarily.
Okay.
And so my first order of business. Okay, thank you. I take approval for the Board of Ed Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of November 9th, 2020. Can I have a second, or a first and a second? Lee? Second?
Yes.
Liz? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting of the minutes of the Committee of the Whole, November 9th, 2020,
Aye.
please say aye. Abstain? Oh, what's the other word? When I do it out of order, I don't remember.
Opposed.
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 Oh, any opposed? Hearing none, we have moved on, please, by the good universe. Dr. Grenier, update on budget planning, please.
Yeah, I briefed Jay a little bit because we're getting ready for a meeting on the 7th of December, but I wanted the board to know that Susan, Ken, and I sometimes with Lori, we're actually working our way through the whole budget book, and we're trying to make sure we capture it. It's a little bit, well, it's a lot of bit different this year because of the whole pandemic. But I think we're in good shape. We're capturing. There were some expenses that you know of, like part-time custodians, that we've added this year, which we anticipate taking out next year. But we're kind of working our way through, and I think by the time the principals are going to turn in their site budgets to Ken on a week from today.
Yep.
And so we'll have the site budgets done. I anticipate we'll pretty much have a working draft for the committee, Jay, on the 7th, and then the committee will kind of look at least the initial plans, and then on the 14th, I was hoping to kind of get into a little bit of detail, at least at the object code level, the kind of the balcony view with the COW on the 14th, and then kind of making a semi-public presentation, at least to the board, on the superintendent's budget while I'm still superintendent. So, but we're in good shape. We're moving along, and as you can imagine, with Ken, we've got lots of good information, and we're tracking last year's progress with this year and factoring in the pandemic. It's a bit complex, but we're in pretty good shape, and we think we're in very good shape, by the way, with the health insurance. So we'll make the presentation. I just wanted you to know that's kind of been a real focus of my work the last couple of weeks.
Dr. Grenier, and also probably Ken. So how are we going to budget for the fact that our health, I would assume our health account would probably be very different next year because there's been so many things that have been pushed off because of COVID, how are we planning on that?
You want to take a crack at that? I've got my own ideas.
Sure. We have not yet met with, and typically what we do is in December, we meet with our health insurance agent, MDG, and we discuss, and we get numbers from Anthem as far as a renewal. So we haven't done that yet. We do anticipate doing that next month. We do think it's going to be a challenge because it's typically based upon the prior year. And as we know, the prior year is not gone the way it normally does, and we can't expect this year and maybe even next year to act as we would normally expect it to act. So, so currently, our health insurance reserve is higher than what we budgeted, higher than what we want, but we also expect that there's going to be a catch up at some point with some of these procedures that have been put off. So we expect some sort of increase. We don't know when that's going to happen. It's dependent upon a lot of things. So it's very difficult to determine in a normal year where we think that health insurance reserve is going to land. This year will be more difficult. So we're just going to have to make some assumptions and move forward from there.
My short answer, Kim, is that I think we probably want to have more. We've always kept about at least 10-15%, about $1.5 million. I would anticipate we will need more. The reserve will be more than normal, and I think we need to leave in more than normal. But we'll still, I believe the board will still be able to tap potentially some of the health insurance reserve, and leave a kind of like a little supplemental, maybe not so little, a supplemental amount, because as Ken pointed out today, not only are people not doing some of these procedures, but hospitals and facilities are not as open as they used to be. Although there are certain members of the board who got in anyway and had major surgery. And it's good to see your face, Lee. But anyway, that's my answer. I think we probably want to leave a good cushion in the reserve, which could go away pretty quickly when things normal.
I just think that that is just really good information for all of us to hold. Not that Lee has had major surgery, but she did have major surgery, and look how well she looks. I couldn't even pull that off. She had hip surgery not even a week ago, or less than a week ago. So, for her to be doing what she's doing is just amazing. But I just think that when we think about budgeting and thinking about what's kind of going on, to keep as much as we can.
Yes.
Because who knows what's going to fly for us next year. I mean, we
Right.
didn't plan on.
Yeah, a worldwide
We had
pandemic.
just approved our budget. We had just approved our budget for this year when
Yep.
when everything went down. Any other questions for Dr. Grenier, or things that you would want him to be thinking about as he gives us, as he prepares a budget for us to then work on starting in January?
I will give you one
And
little bit
Dr.
of good,
Grenier,
yeah.
go ahead.
I'll give you a little bit of good news. I don't know if I put it, I don't think I put it in my board notes. We were very nervous that the impact aid, because of the pandemic, we wouldn't get the forms back. In fact, we're only getting 10% of them back at the high school, which could have cost the town in excess of $1 million easily. Representative Courtney put in a bill that would allow us to use last year's figures, us and all the other districts in the country, use last year's enrollment figures for this year's impact aid. It went to the House and it was passed by unanimous consensus. It went to the Senate last week and it passed by unanimous consensus. And I just got a note that if the president doesn't sign it, it becomes law in 10 days, whether he signs it or not. So I would have no reason to expect that the president would veto the bill since it passed unanimously in the House and the Senate. But hopefully on the 23rd, I'll be able to report that we in fact will use last year's numbers, which actually gave us gave us, the town, a good amount of impact aid. So it's kind of a real
Good
problem
news.
that I think we avoided.
Good news. Good news.
Very good.
Mhm.
So that's it for me.
Any other questions for Dr. Grenier? All right, moving on to the review of residency verification. I don't know if Susan or you want to talk about this.
Susan.
This actually
Susan.
kind of came from
Yep.
Jay as well.
Well, it's a very good question. It's actually, when we review residency, it's a three-pronged process that we actually have in place. The first is there's an annual review of Power School where parents have to actually review their data and confirm that their residency holds. The second tier is that we have a structure in place for examining residency, especially when it comes to some of our higher special ed needs that are out of district placement, and also with our magnet schools. So there's a confirmation in that, and we keep really close track, communicating with the magnet schools, communicating with the parents, and communicating with the outplacements. So we keep a close eye on that. And I will actually take responsibility in working with Denise Doolittle and the finance staff that she has available to really review all those records. And then the third is that policy committee has talked about re-examining the current policy, and you received that as attachment 2. It's policy 5112.2. And there have been some things that have come to my attention in the initial registration process, and we're also going to be going online soon. So we want to make sure that everything is carefully laid out for this process. So the policy committee will be bringing this to the board. I think it's a New Year's kind of resolution where I'd love to be able to start looking at this very closely in January, and we'll go from there. But I just wanted you to know there are structures in place, and I will oversee those and make sure that we are very careful. We also have used committees at the school level, crisis teams, when we think a child is not living where they originally said they were living, and that gets examined, and we use community policing and other community services to help support us in finding out where children are and where they live and where they lay their head. That's the important part about residency. Any
Yep.
questions?
Jay?
So you may all recall that this started because in Norwich, the superintendent up there discovered that they really didn't have the policies and procedures in place. And so she hired someone to actually investigate. And so this all started to see, what are our policies? I think it's safe to say, even before we dig any further, that we're not in the same position that they were in with regard to, she admitted they didn't have things in place. And so obviously we already have things in place and we're looking into it further. Someone had asked me, are we going to hire someone, to be an investigator, because Norwich saw millions of dollars in savings. And this is just the beginning of that process, whether we even would need to go, that far. It already sounds like we're head and shoulders above where they were when she came in. And so that's what just spurred this whole conversation.
Right. And in order to save millions of dollars, there must have been some outside placements or magnet school information that wasn't correct. So I can see that would be able to make a really big savings. So just know that I am going to be reviewing all of that very carefully and reviewing the policy and making sure that we, are really safeguarding not only once kids are here, but when they come to us, to make sure that they are where they say they are and where they live. That's really important.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that? Enrollment projections for the Thames River and Mystic River Magnet Schools, because they now have been named.
Yes. So you may remember that I did my my sketchy math, my math, assuming that everybody would roll over the way we assumed they would roll over, and kind of figured out how those numbers would work out per grade level, per school. But there's more that we can do about it. Actually, Mike and I have talked to Mike Zuba, who did a lot of work with preparing that preferred plan. And there are some specific information that we've been able to give him regarding our rollover and our data, so that he can do a little better job fine tuning. We actually put a call out to him. Mike and I discussed this today. And so I'm going to be speaking with him tomorrow morning and just double checking to see what needs to be in place. What can we do to get a better estimate on these numbers? Because I think it could be a case of efficiencies for us in our schools if we have a better handle on what we're seeing as numbers. And of course, because these two schools are partially funded by our State Department, that we really want to make sure that we have 604 students in each of the schools, pre-K through 5. So that's really important. It starts with the neighborhood schools, and then with the 5 magnet schools, we'll be having kids move from school to school, depending on how they sign up for the lottery and how they're drawn. So I think the more information we can have ahead of time, the more efficiencies we'll be able to see in the future. Any questions on that one? Just another math problem to solve.
I'm so glad you're the math person, because There was a reason I was a social studies teacher for 30 plus years.
Well,
Okay.
Mike was a English teacher, but he likes math too, and so does Ken, and so does Lori. So we make a good team.
You're lucky. I gave up my checkbook.
So any other questions about the enrollment? Once again, I think that the board should just be used to, like, we need to be talking about the elementary schools all the time.
Yes.
This kind of blends us into sort of what Dr. Grenier was talking, his agenda topic, but also about the neighborhood redistribution is how we're going to fund the magnet programs on, because now we're going to have 5 elementary magnet programs. And I am still haunted by the conversation that Jay raised a couple of years ago when we realized that we did not have enough monies in our budget to help our magnet themes for Northeast and for Catherine Kanowski. And so I think it behooves us to kind of have that conversation and get a sense from the board about what we're thinking about that as well. Mike or Susan?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were, I thought we were still talking to the other. So the budget, the budget planning is, I was saying to Susan today that we're going to do a little bit of reverse planning here. Start with the end in mind. So we're gonna have a lottery. The school, well, we had a wonderful topping off ceremony today, where we said to the folks who came to the ceremony that the school is going to open in September, which is really very exciting. This 3-story building that's going up like unbelievably quickly. So I mentioned to Susan that we will probably have a lottery, let's say at the end of mid to late April, for these schools. So then moving back, we have to explain to people that we have 5 magnet schools now. Catherine Konowski is fairly well developed, very well developed. In Northeast Academy, I think people understand the nature of the performing arts magnet. But we have these 3 schools coming online. We have the 3 themes. We have 1 faculty yet. Charles Barnum faculty is actually starting to think about it. And then we have the 2 new faculties yet to be determined, but we do have the 2 principals. So I think what we need to do fairly soon is get working. And we've got, Susan and I have some ideas, and we're gonna talk about maybe as soon as the month of December to get people working at least under a stipended curriculum type thing, to start working with the 3 schools, well, with the 3 principals, to develop the theme. As Susan was saying today, we probably want to start advertising this like in January, which means you have to have something called the Discovery Academy. We have to explain to people what that means. If I'm not going to have my child go to my home school, but to go to a magnet school, we're going to need some work there. So we're working on some staffing for that, and then in the budget, we have allocated some funds. Actually, each of the schools now is a magnet school, so we're taking the magnet funding that we had and we're spreading it over 5 schools. It's going to have to be a decision by the board to pull off. We'll talk about Thames River Magnet School. Thames River probably will want to have a Project O connection. It will probably want to have New England Science and Sailing. There are a number of things. The Play and Ingenuity School perhaps would want to have a relationship with the aquarium or Mystic Seaport or both. And those programs are going to take some money. So we're going to have to take a real look at the budget in that way. But at least I just wanted the board to know we're thinking and trying to allocate personnel like almost immediately, because over the next, today the 16th, certainly over the next 2 months, we really need to put meat on the bone here of what these magnet schools look like. And I think we're off to a relatively good start. And hopefully by next week, we'll come to you with a plan. Susan and I have been working. But there's money.
We have a timeline because we know that it's really important to find out who's retiring in the district. And so we've worked with Beth on that. And to make sure our staff has a survey that they can demonstrate their preferences so that we can really get a handle on that. Because I think once they're in place, then that work can absolutely, they're going to be very enthusiastic, I know, to be doing that work.
So we're talking about, like, in a couple of weeks, having someone who is going to start having very long, hard, God, I'm sounding like Dr. Grenier, having really long thoughts about
Yes.
the
Yes.
magnet school program.
Yes, all
Okay.
three.
All
Yeah.
three of them. And so the stipend, where is that coming from?
Well, it can come in the short term. We do have some curriculum development money. It could also come. I think we've allocated a fair amount of the Corona Relief Fund, Ken, right? And that's sort of gone. But the way we've structured the Corona Relief Fund, we believe there's going to be some money. I'll let Ken talk to this because I don't want to make projections that don't come true. But in the spring, Ken, when you take out the subs and the other sorts of things that we've done, where do you think we are?
Yeah, it's possible that there might be some additional funding there to fund that. But we do have some funds available to us under curriculum development because everything we did, everything Susan did in her group over the summer to get ready for this year, it's centered around the distance learning and that type of thing. So we were able to charge off all of that to the Corona Relief Fund.
That's right. We really tried to look at those grants for their purposes. And we've been able to take a lot of those funds that would normally come from an operation budget, but because of the coronavirus, we've been able to use CARES Act and the Corona Relief Fund.
I think the board's going to see as we go into the new year, into 2021, that a good portion, I don't want to exaggerate, but I think there's going to be a good portion of funds that has been protected, the operational funds, so that there'll be some little bit of flexibility as we go through the spring. But of course, God only knows what's going to happen in the spring. So I don't want to blithely promise some funds, but we've used all the funds that we possibly could have legally to kind of protect the operational budget. And we have a CARES Act coming up, which has some funding, but limited, frankly.
So in the budget that we're going to see in January, we're going to see where there's going to be someone
Yes.
on some level planning
Yes.
around each of the new
Yes.
magnet schools. Is that correct?
Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
And it may be a shared responsibility as well.
Well, in other words, there might be
And
a person that takes care of a couple of schools, but yes, there'll be somebody who's going to facilitate and manage coordinate the magnet theme.
any questions from the board around this?
Mike,
Yes.
Susan, just quick question. Are we kind of putting off to the side for a year or two pursuing the PYP for a connection?
At least for next year.
I think
Yeah, I
I
kind of
think
thought
that
so.
would require a big DOD grant. That would require funding source beyond the district source.
I thought so. I just wanted to,
painful. It's a painful yes.
it's a painful yes, but
But I
Yeah.
think we heard loud and clear that we've got a lot on our shoulders right now. You
Yep.
know, never mind the pandemic, but the Groton 2020 unfolding completely. So I think it's worth taking that time.
absolutely. Totally agree with you.
Before I move to the next, this is a regular committee of the whole meeting. Joan, this is where I might need your help. But I am just wondering what is not on here, and I'm remiss on this, is any conversation about sort of current sort of updates on the COVID and distance learning, not to spend a lot of time, but just like an update. And I don't know if that is, Joan, I can do that with 2/3 vote. Is that correct?
That is my understanding.
Right. Dean, Dean, your experience with the town council, is that correct as far as you know?
Yeah, I would concur. I think you did 2/3 vote.
It's a regular meeting, so you can add it.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of just adding to get some update on sort of what's happening in terms of the COVID numbers and also just distance learning and going into the holidays. Can I, that's my motion. Can I have a second to that?
Second.
Thank you, Dean. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of adding, asking for an update on the COVID stuff, how's that for being technical?
Situation?
Update regarding the COVID response. How's that?
The COVID response. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? It looks like the motion has carried. All right, so we'll have that after the three elementary schools, because I think we're done. I think that's where we are. Sorry, I have a cat that thinks that she needs to eat, and so she's gonna like be in my face and until that. So I'm gonna be right behind you guys. But Dr. Grenier, can you
Sure.
can you start? Because this is really life preservation for me, because if I don't do it, she actually attacks me. So
It's a health and safety. So the reason I was happy to see this on the agenda is because we've spoken about the 3 schools that are about to be closed in end of June: Clodchester, SB Butler, and Mary Morrison. And they will be consolidated into the 2 new elementary schools. But the board has yet to actually vote on what the disposition is going to be for the schools. So you want to explain a little bit, Jay, because we pursued this in some detail at the finance facilities meeting about what we thought should happen, and I just want to see if we could have maybe a more in-depth conversation here.
Well, I think we started with the recommendation of Sam
Yes.
and yourself that looking at the 3 schools, my recollection was that SB Butler is going to need a new roof.
About $900,000.
Right. And so because of that, it was thought that would not be the one to hold on to.
It's also the oldest. It's the oldest one and probably the one most in need of repair.
Right. And maybe the least flexible. I'm not sure in terms of floor plan, but the problem that Sam brought up with Clodchester. So what we want to accomplish, that we discussed at the meeting, was we need at least a temporary place for robotics, in addition to swing space. And, in case we have some huge bump in enrollment. And the problem with Clodchester is Sam is not confident that the floor in that auditorium would hold the weight of the robotics equipment. And so that leaves Mary Morrison as the one that could potentially house robotics for some time and allow us to have a little bit of breathing room if we need to reconfigure due to enrollment. That was what I took from.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right.
I'd like to add that swing space is going to be really important. I think we've gotten the good news that Electric Boat has won the contract for the Columbia class submarines.
Right.
And that means that it could be a bump in our economy and in our enrollment and all kinds of positive things. So to have a Mary Morrison there for the future one of the things this board has talked about all along is to maybe house an early childhood center. And that could be a space that's really kind of centralized, that we could do that in the future. So I think, saving the Mary Morrison, which is probably the best of the three,
Right.
as far as, keeping
Physically.
for the schools, and having that option, we just don't know. We don't have a crystal ball what this could look like. And I would just say that would really safeguard us as a district. So I would definitely say that that would be a useful purpose.
Plus,
Mary Morrison.
there's a project slated for the school, the old school off of Route 12. I can't think of the name right now. Not PV.
Sealy.
Yeah,
Sealy.
Sealy, for residential housing, and that would be close to that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And I think there's other condos that are going up in between Charles Barnum
that?
and Morrison.
Can I, I'll recognize Andrea and then I'll recognize Liz.
Sam, it seems to me that we've had long conversations about the parking lot at Mary Morrison being dangerous. And the capital budget keeps getting cut from there. Do you have any plans for that, or do you have any suggestions about that or concerns about it?
That was one of the other items that we discussed at the Finance Facilities Committee meeting regarding that school and having it closed. But I don't have any hopes that until we decide if we needed to open it up again, we would certainly need to do something about that. But that cost of that would be far less than a new roof at SB Butler and any other work that might need to be done at SB Butler, for instance.
Can I ask a follow-up? Well, what about in terms of the floor at Clodchester? Would it be more than that, less than that?
I don't really know exactly what Clodchester would cost if it were deemed to be in need of greater repair. As you know, last year we had an engineer come in 10 years ago when Wes was here. He had made some repairs on the beams, and it was scheduled to be looked at again after those 10 years. And Wes texted me to let me know those 10 years were up, and that's why we had the engineer come in. They came in, they gave us recommendations on what to do to repair the beams again, because they did deteriorate to a certain degree. And so we did that again. But when you start talking about putting the weight of, there are very large pieces of equipment, milling machines, et cetera, that robotics uses. You put that plus the vibration of that equipment and so on that gym floor. I'd be concerned without having a professional engineer come in and actually take a look at it and do a very thorough study regarding that gym floor.
What I meant was, I guess you are telling me, no, you don't know. In terms of cost, parking lot, gym floor.
Well, I would say that a gym floor, if it were in greater need of a repair, would be far more than the parking lot work. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Liz?
Susan, just clarify for me, when you say early childhood center, is that pre-K, K1 or pre-K, K, or just some
I was really thinking of preschool, pre-K.
preschool, pre-K?
But
Okay,
I think
thank
we'd
you.
have to define what our needs are at that time, But I think reserving that building, in case we needed it and there was a boom, which would be wonderful, we would have a place for our kids.
Yep.
So we'd be
Thank
prepared.
you.
All right, Kim?
Dean, absolutely.
Yeah, so as I understand it, it looks like we would be keeping Mary Morrison for one or another purpose. We would have no further use for Butler, no further use for Clodchester. And so those would be what, turned over to the town for the town to do what they wanted to do?
Yeah.
A la Sealy, okay.
Yes.
Because as you all know, people have raised this all the time. Every time we try to, get a referendum through, we keep collecting these abandoned buildings or these old buildings. We don't use them for schools anymore. Can we clean that inventory up before we go building new buildings? So I was always in favor of having what looked like at least a proposal for how do we move the inventory? Not that we have control over everything. If we wanted to sell the Butler site and nobody wanted to buy it, we can't control that. But it seems to people from the outside that we collect these buildings and then we don't seem to move them along. And I know there's reasons for each one of them, but that you all know the impression that we wind up giving when we do this.
So Dean, I think it was either last year or the year before that, the Board of Ed met with the town council and the education committee. Actually, this is around our budget time period. And we did have a discussion about coming up with a process. I can't pull it all from my head, but coming up with a process of what do we do when we've abandoned those buildings, right?
Oh, yeah, we had a little chart.
Yeah, we did. So it exists somewhere. So we actually have a much better chart. So it's not, so something just doesn't go in limbo. I think Pleasant Valley speaks to that,
Right.
where it was, there was some kind of back and forth between what we needed, what they needed, et cetera. And so finally it's done with, but I'm hoping that in the spring, we can really begin to have conversation with the town council and the RTM to say, this is coming, this is what we want to keep. We're going to keep ownership of this building. And then this is so that you guys know, so you can make a plan. I mean, we will have to vote on it anyways, but so that they can make a plan about what they want to do with that.
Right. All right. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. My question is if we continue on as the recommendation that's from the superintendent, but that also backed by the finance committee, is how do we, like, we have to continuously have kids in there, right? Because if not, then we would have to sort of do work to kind of get it back into code. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, it wouldn't, I'll let Sam weigh in. But if you wanted like a year or two from now to do swing space, you would probably have to do some code upgrades. Is that fair to say, Sam?
I'm not sure that we would have to do code upgrades, but we'd certainly have to keep the building up to par. Keep heating the building, so on and so forth. We wouldn't mothball it, that's for sure.
Jay?
And robotics would move there from Pleasant Valley. So there'd be a tangential educational purpose to the building, right?
Yes, and presently we're providing the heat and electricity for Pleasant Valley while robotics is there. And so we would just move that money to Mary Morrison, say, and keep the heat going, electricity and so on. And if it were deemed that an early childhood program, if you wanted to get one started in that building, there's a wing of that building that could be used alongside robotics being in the cafeteria possibly. So
my concern is and then I'll be quiet. I'm asking a lot of questions tonight, and I apologize about that. But so Susan, let's say we get Mary Morrison, and we move robotics because we have made this sort of verbal promise to robotics that we would have them. They would find a space. They would get a space, but is it possible that the space that they would use interfere if we needed it for swing space? And then what do we do?
I don't think so. And I wouldn't think that we would need that swing space anytime soon. I think we're talking after, 4 or 5 years, if we should, increase that enrollment. So I don't think this is something that would happen in the next year or so. So I don't think there would be any problem with that, especially since the robotics team, does their work after school. And so, and they would secure that whole area in the gymnasium cafeteria, but there's plenty of other space, for a different program as well.
Oh, I got it about a different program. I guess my pushback is that if all of a sudden we needed it as an elementary school, and in 6 years, we've retrofitted a portion of the building that we would need for gatherings. Dr. Grenier?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you really wanted it to become a fully functioning elementary school, robotics would have to go, and we'd be back to what we were trying to do last year before they allowed us to use Pleasant Valley. We'd be out in the community trying to find a place with the appropriate square feet, like some sort of industrial. You know, we started to poke around about that, and then John Burt indicated we could just stay there for a year. So, you know, as Dean says, the town has these properties, and they've been quite cooperative. So, you know, that would be a good problem to have if we literally needed another 300 or 400 children in our school system. But yeah, I mean, robotics would have to move someplace.
I'm not trying to borrow trouble, but I just,
Yeah.
Kim?
yes, Jay.
I also thought I'd mention, since we're on the subject of vacant buildings and that sort of thing, I heard that Community Health Center is actually in Pleasant Valley now, as of today, doing COVID testing.
Yes, they are.
In the parking lot, not in the building.
Oh, in the parking lot. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So-
They went through the town and through me, and Sam is providing a little bit of custodial. Well, they have a key to the building, and so their folks use the bathroom. That's the extent of it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's a good use.
Yeah. Oh, it's a wonderful use.
Any more conversation about that?
The only thing I'm going to say is that it would be helpful on the 23rd if we could put this on for a vote, because it seems like we've been talking about it for a really long time, and I think the board, it would be helpful for the board to say these are our intentions, and we write a letter to the town saying it's the intention of the board to retain Mary Morrison for robotics and swing space, and then to turn over to the town. And I'll dig out that chart, Kim. You're right. We articulated a whole thing.
Well, we don't have anything else happening on
Right.
next week's meeting. Just, voting on a superintendent, our leadership. Yeah, there's something going on. Is there information that board members need to have before we take that vote on those three buildings? I know, Dean, that you might feel like you are behind the curve a little bit on this, but I think your background on town council kind of is probably pretty helpful. But is there any other information that you feel that Dr. Grenier needs to, or Susan need to provide, so that or do we feel like we have enough information and have had enough discussion that we can make a vote on that we're going to be closing those 3 elementary schools? Actually, we're going to be closing 2 elementary schools and keeping in our possession Mary Morrison.
What I would ask is, has there been any, I mean, I know that was done once with the Noank School. There was a reuse committee to determine what the community feeling was with respect to keeping the building in some form if it's no longer going to be a school. Is there any community sentiment with respect to these buildings? So we're closing the buildings. That's been known for, we're not going to be using them as schools. It's been known for a long time. Has anybody said, we really need this building for this purpose or that purpose or another purpose? In other words, if we decide to close 2 and keep Mary Morrison, are we flying in the face of some large sentiment going the other way?
Well, I think it's ultimately our decision as a board, which one for educational purposes, which building to keep.
Right. Yeah, I guess you're right. In that sense, it's probably the town's problem, not our problem so much. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, I don't know whether just for giggles, has anybody heard anything? We should keep this school for this reason.
I can tell you a number of people, because of Colchester's central location, have said to me, boy, wouldn't that be a great place for a community center?
Yeah, I can imagine that.
And of course, the Fields people
Right.
say, wouldn't that be a great place to expand Fields, knock the building down and do a field? And the same thing, frankly, with SB Butler. A lot of people have said it's a nice residential area. It'd be great to have another another couple of fields there if we could put those in. But in answer to your question, this does not fly in the face of anything that I know of. The only folks who said to me they were somewhat disappointed were the robotics people, because they would really like to have SB Butler, but I explained to them it'd be a $900,000 investment that I really don't think the town would be making. But other than that, I think the uses are completely up to the town.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Can you remind me, Sam? I know that Claude Chester has had the asbestos abatement. Did Mary Morrison go through that process?
Mary Morrison did, yes. SB Butler has not.
Okay. See, that's another thing.
Yeah.
Is the asbestos abatement at Butler.
Yeah,
Not,
that'd
not,
be another.
not cheap.
Not
Thank you,
cheap,
Jay.
Yeah.
right.
Thank you.
Not to mention the police firing range that's in the basement with the lead. Maybe I shouldn't mention that.
Well, one bright spot, if I can jump in, one bright spot is if you've done asbestos remediation, would demolition costs go down?
Yeah, oh, significantly, yes.
Not
Because
a
it
total
wouldn't have to
cost.
be abated. And the state paid for half of the abatement cost.
Any other questions? I am going to just move to the agenda item that we voted on, which is just the upset. Yeah, that's the word. The update on the COVID response.
Well, I actually, I'll let Susan talk about the distance learning and everything, but I wrote a note, and the director of Legislative Health District called me this evening, Steve Mansfield, and I said that we were considering, like a lot of people were concerned with either the infections spreading, particularly after Thanksgiving, or if people are going to leave the state, and they're essentially free to do that, and virtually every state that surrounds us, if you spent the weekend there with family, they would either have to test out with a 3-day test or stay self-quarantined for 14 days. So I said to him, there's that concern. And he said that he spoke to the Department of Public Health today, and they did not see that there was significant spreading of the virus, at least in schools. And so the Department of Public Health does not see that as a significant problem, and therefore would not recommend it. But he did say that there are several school districts in the area that are having a hard time. I think Waterford and New London, Waterford and East Lyme, he indicated we're going to close for starting tomorrow for the 2 weeks prior, well, this week and prior to Thanksgiving, because they're having trouble with staff. And I think, staffing the buildings. I think that's probably, well, please God, the virus doesn't spread into the schools. But the more likely scenario, frankly, is I got a phone call from the high school principal today, and they had no extra staff. They had everybody who could possibly cover a class was covering a class. If we had another case in one of the schools and we needed to quarantine 3 or 4 teachers, we couldn't open the school. That's true for all the schools. There are no subs available. All the subs we have are the ones that we employ sort of permanently, so that we would we may want to. What I said to Steve Mansfield was that I would call him on Friday. I'm gonna monitor. He and I are going to monitor the infection rate carefully. So I'll give you a couple of scenarios. One scenario that I heard today is that maybe we would close for the week after Thanksgiving, which would mean the children would leave on the 24th. They would that is to say the Tuesday. There would be some instruction on Wednesday, but not in person. So the in-person class would leave on the 24th, and the children would come back on the 7th. That would give us a 12-day break if we took if we switch to remote learning for the week after Thanksgiving. Some districts are switching to 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, which would be from November 24th to December 14th. That would give us 19 days. And of course, that counts weekends, but that's a pretty significant in terms of seeing if the infection rate is going forward. And then with Christmas itself is a 12-day break. So I think at this point, one is we're monitoring the infection rate. Two is we're monitoring the staff. And I have a feeling that the problematic issue of having sufficient staff to run the schools in person, that may be our biggest obstacle, frankly. And like I say, if there's a case and 2 or 3 people, I think people are doing, I don't want to appear cavalier. I think the schools are doing a great job. People are wearing masks literally 100% of the time, including the pre-K children, including all the special ed kids that I know of. The teachers are wearing the masks. I think our mitigation strategies seem to be working quite well. But as you know, there's infections in the community, and every time we get an infection, it's almost universally it's from a family member. It's going rampant through families. So some kid gets it, and then you find out that the kid's brother or sister has it, and the parents, and so forth and so on. But we've tested well over 200 people who were contacts, and again, not good. There has not been a single positive case reported to us, not a single one. That is to say, people are getting COVID, that's for sure. They're just not getting COVID in the schools, which leads me to, I think our biggest obstacle really is going to be staffing the schools. So, I'm looking at the decision, and I'll talk to Steve about it, Steve Mansfield. But if we switch to remote learning for the week after, that gives us 12 days. And if during that 12-day period, if there seems to be significant problems with staff, I mean, we would know that. I mean, that'd be the good news. We would know we have more problems, so maybe we would need a longer. I mean, heck, some school systems are going out until the day after Martin Luther King Day, which is 37 days, and that seems somewhat excessive to me, because we still hear kids do better. A lot of kids do better if they're in school, and some kids do great. A lot of kids do great when they're home on remote learning, but I'll let Susan talk a little bit more about this. But my perception from talking to the principals is that if the kids come to school, especially if they're the kinds of kids who struggle with school normally, they do better in person, and they tend not to be particularly engaged when they're remote. But I'll let Susan talk for a while.
Well, we actually met with Curriculum Instruction Council, and Andrea Ackerman and Jane Giolino were with me to hear, and brought up the question, so how is it going with the hybrid model, and what are you noticing? And we've had lots of different responses, mostly that it is a lot of hard work. It's hard work on our teachers. We know it's hard work on our families to have the hybrid when they're in some of the time and out some of the time. But the bigger concern is with full remote, because we're seeing more disengagement and disconnectedness. And we've noticed now, as we're getting ready to give out report cards, and I've sent out a message to all of our families, elementary, middle school, and high school, saying that we appreciate their support. It really does take this partnership of us as educators and them as parents to be able to make sure kids are successful. And the best way they can be successful, attendance still matters, whether it's remote or whether it's in person, and that they are doing their best work, and they are getting their work done, and completing it in a timely manner. So while that sounds simple, we do have many children, I think I mentioned this last week, as many as 60 a week that are totally disconnected. That means they don't come on once. And we've noticed also that when schools go out for a week and then come back, there's like this transition period. So we might even be losing a few of those in between. So this is not an easy problem to solve. We do have our concerns, and we really do need this partnership between home and school now more than ever before. So that was kind of my takeaway. I didn't know if Andrea or Jane wanted to add to that.
I do. I'm going to propose something to the board that I talked to the curriculum council about today. And it's a radical thing to think about, but it is something to think about. And that is, I see a great deal of the problem being the inconsistency of children who, I'm in school some of the time, I'm not in school some of the time, and the teachers are addressing this, but nobody is looking at how can we propose a unified approach to this. And I'm suggesting that we go totally remote and have the teachers study, perhaps from other districts, professional development, how to engage children who are home all of the time. Because I think that the real problem is that this inconsistency of, I don't know what I'm doing. And when I'm not in school, oh, well, I'll watch TV or whatever I'll do. But if we knew that I have to get up in the morning and I'm going to be every day at home, but it has to come from instruction from the staff. So that's something that I think we ought to be looking at.
Just to remind
Struck me
board,
with the-
we actually don't vote on that. Just that we can take the recommendation from the superintendent, but it's
Right.
not our job to decide about if we're all in or all
Oh,
out.
I understand that. What I'm saying though is that we should be looking at that as a district, not necessarily as a board.
Yeah.
And
Thank you,
there
Andrea.
is,
Jay?
oh, I'm sorry, Jay.
No, that's okay.
Jay and Jane.
Quick question. I know about 50 memos ago from the Department of Education, they said that even though it is the superintendent's call, that you still had to apply to the state to go out long-term. Is that still, does the commissioner actually have to approve that as well? Or
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Although the commissioner, both, as I said in my board notes, the Commissioner of Education and the Department of Public Health, they sent a pretty strong memo last week saying that they thought it was far better for the students to be in school, which of course is true. And then the next day, basically every town in Connecticut became a red alert town. So we're balancing, and I think we seem to be in a place right now that in terms of schools, it's safe to be in them, but we keep seems like we keep dancing around what may be, if I follow the national picture. But no, Jay, it's the governor's left us up to superintendents.
Just
Jane?
what struck me today in listening to the teachers was, first of all, the layers of issues and concerns that the kids and families are having. A good deal of confusion, a good deal of just worrying, and it's deep and difficult. And what also struck me was the total dedication of the teachers. They are working very hard together, solving problems, work with Susan. It's amazing to watch and very concerning in terms of the children and the families.
And I would say that's what we heard loud and clear, is their priority. They know it's hard work for themselves, but their priority is their students.
Yeah.
We heard from a kindergarten teacher who said that, you know, he knows that his students do better when they're in front of him, and that he felt like when they went off to distance learning, he felt like he lost a few of them. So, and they did mention the going back and forth might have something to do with that. But I do feel like we've just got to be careful in making the decision, and it's not an easy decision to make. I can think of it one way one day and think, yes, this is the way we should go. And another day, we might think of it a little differently. And it really has a lot to do with what's happening in our community.
Kim, if I could have one more thing to say, and that is that I'm not suggesting in any way that remote learning is better than being in the classroom. But I also listen to the teachers who are, you know, trying to juggle different ways of addressing. I've got to teach real people in front of me, and then I've got to teach real people who are not in front of me. And I think that if we could get together and come up with one way of doing it, and my suggestion is to do it totally remote for now. And that's my concern. I don't in any way suggest that it's better than being in the classroom.
Well, the other thing that we learned was, you're right, the hybrid is by far more difficult. But I talked to a few of the principals who shifted to full remote because of an infection there and lots of contact tracing. And they said it was really remarkable that when they made the shift, it was so much easier. You know, we've gotten, I don't want to brag about it, but I think we've gotten far better. As you know, if you compare it to the spring, it's night and day.
Yeah.
We are much better. We have better equipment. We have better software, and most of all, we understand this distance learning far better than we did. You know, I think everyone is sort of holding on by their fingernails to try to keep kids engaged, and I think we're learning lessons because, as you say about hybrid, 66% of the kids are not in front of you on any given day. And then the last feature I'll say is this, and I didn't know this until today. The kids may be forcing our hand more than you know. There were only 166 kids who came to the high school today. Normally it's about 350 to 360, only 166. And remember, they were out for 2 weeks. So there may be some kids who actually are following your advice, Andrea, and saying, I'm adjusting to this distance learning. And I'm sure there are kids who are saying that. And I don't want to come in and out and in and out. It's driving me nuts. I'd rather just be out, and I can plan for that. So that's another you know, data point that I'm going to consider I think by Friday, please God, I could deliver a fairly articulate decision that the health people will be happy with and the educators will be happy with.
I don't think anyone's going to be happy. I think that,
No,
I think
that's true.
I just think that this is just a really hard, there's no easy answers. There's not one answer that's going to make sense for everyone.
Yeah.
I just, you know, my heart goes out to the teachers who have to kind of do this balancing between what's going on. But my heart goes out to the students and to their families who, like, they're at work and then they find out that on Friday they can't be at work because it is now full remote. And so, and this, I'm sure this back and forth doesn't help. And so I'm glad that there are some high school students who are saying this is just what's going to be easiest for me, or it's going to be the most palatable for us. So I appreciate Dr. Grenier and Susan about the efforts that the heavy thoughts on this, because there is no way to paint this.
Your idea, Andrea, is on the radar.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
So
right.
that's
All right.
that's where we are in the middle of a pandemic, but we're building a building.
True.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Review of the referral list. Woo!
Kim,
Yes.
I thought the last time we did this, we had put on under the curriculum and instruction, the review of the African American Latino Studies course that was going to be presented to the board, to the curriculum committee, because the state just released their curriculum. So, and it's not here. So,
I think where it got landed was that was going to be already on your agenda. I think that's where it landed, but we can absolutely put it on the referral list.
I really
But
think
I
it needs to be there, personally.
All right, not a problem.
From
Ms.
American,
Jones, can you put that back
yeah.
on?
And the thing is,
got it.
Carnita is going to come to the committee, but we'll put it on there, Joan.
Yeah.
It's a review of the African American Puerto Rican Studies curriculum.
Is it being called Puerto Rican, or is it being called Latino or Hispanic?
Maybe Hispanic.
Okay, because
Yeah.
Puerto Rican's too limiting.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get the correct language.
Right, and Susan, we're going to be doing that at the next curriculum committee, correct? You've got that on
Yes, we can do
on the
that.
agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I like Hispanic, Liz, because my family is from Barcelona and I'm in as a Hispanic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Other things about the referral list? And or things that we want to talk about coming up?
In that case,
Well, next
Ready?
meeting is going to have some big votes, so that would be good.
Right.
in that case, Kim, are you ready? Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second by Liz. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. The motion has carried. Good night.
See you
everyone.
all later.
Everyone.